Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shner Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 710 for the 18th of Cheshvan in a regular year. Life. Life is a crazy thing if you think about it. We talked about the power of now. We talked about living our lives in this way that is very present, not focusing too much on the past or the future and getting lost in those things, and really being present here in the now, as that's really the only thing that we can have true impact on. And this is a very deep idea. And in fact, while yes, it resonates in a lot of ways with Jewish ideas, with especially the Kabbalistic idea of Hashem creating the world something from nothing at all times, we find this idea very prevalent in the world at large. It's a very common thing. Mindfulness, meditation is all about living in the present moment, being really here in the now. However, Judaism kind of expands on this idea and takes it to the next level and talks about this idea of how, well, yes, on the one hand, we're very much supposed to live in the present, be here now. And in fact, that's a good way to kind of like not get too caught up in your ego and your definition of self, which is kind of constantly fluctuating. On the other hand, there is a very deep principle in Judaism that your present actions, in fact, do impact the future very much so. And as we've learned in the whole section that we talked about Shuvah, your present actions can even impact the past, which is really crazy. So while we are very much bound to the limitations of time and space, there's a transcendent level to reality that transcends time and space. And in fact, God is beyond time and space. And there are worlds that are able to transcend this level of time and space. And the actions that we perform here in our lifetime while we're alive impact the future, impact our future life. And our future life after we pass away, that's in fact, when the impact of our present actions while we were alive actually become revealed. So this is true for everybody, but it's most especially true, and the power of this is most especially true for those special people, which we know of as tzaddikim, as holy people, righteous people, whose lives are not really regular lives like we have, which consist of a lot of survival, physicality, keeping ourselves alive, finding pleasure in our lives in a physical way, and then also kind of finding time for spiritual ideas for God. But righteous people, true tzaddikim, their entire life is devoted to godly service. They don't have this craving. They don't have this need for physical pleasure the way that most people do. And thus, because their whole entire life is so devoted to abnegation of the self in that way, then the impact of their deeds after they pass away is going to be a lot more powerful, and it's going to create a much bigger impact on the world at large, and especially for those people who are close to them. So this is something that we've been talking about in the past few episodes, and the context that this has come up in is in two letters that we've been looking at. The first letter that we looked at was a letter of consolation that the Alter Rebbe wrote to his followers after the passing of a very great man, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, and he talked about this idea of the impact of the passing of a tzaddik and the impact that has on his followers, and how the followers in a certain sense can actually become more connected to the tzaddik after the tzaddik passes away. So that was a few episodes ago when we explored that letter. Yesterday, we started looking at another letter of condolence that the Alter Rebbe wrote, this time to Rabbi Levi Yitchak of Berditchov after the passing of his son. And his son was also a tzaddik. He wasn't necessarily as renowned as Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Horzok, and so he didn't have this like big following, but nevertheless he was a tzaddik in his own right. And so what we've been exploring in this letter is the impact that such a tzaddik has on the world at large after he passes away. And so, as I mentioned just previously, the actions that we have here on earth and what we do, these create effects on high. And those effects on high remain concealed until the point when the person passes away, at which point they become revealed. And so today we're going to be exploring those impacts, the impact that a tzaddik has and that the effect a tzaddik has during their life that then becomes revealed when they pass away. We already began this discussion and started to explore some of this by looking at the passing of a very righteous person in Torah, namely Miriam, the prophetess, and looking at the fact that like her passing is written in adjacent to the laws of the Parah Aduma, and we started talking about why that might be and the connection between those two things. So yesterday we started talking about this Parah Aduma, the red heifer, the laws of the red heifer, and what distinguished it from the other types of sacrifices, because it wasn't quite like the other sacrifices. It was prepared outside of the tents, and yet, unlike the other sacrifices, it had a special power to be able to give a person atonement, not just for sins that a person did by accident and that kind of thing, but the special power of the Parah Aduma, the red heifer, was that it was able to purify a person from being in contact with death, where death is the utmost of impurity. It's a level of impurity that far surpasses the impurity that a person gets from sinning, especially if we're talking about an inadvertent sin, which was what most of the other animal sacrifices were about, where it came to atone for. So we talked about how the Parah Aduma did this, the power of the Parah Aduma, and why it was able to have this power to purify a person from something like death. And we said that it has to do specifically with the waters that were involved in the mixing of the ashes of the Parah Aduma, and how those waters correspond to this dew on high, this dew of the crystal, as the Zohar calls it, which comes from a place that's high up above, in the supernal level of the mochastima, the hidden minds, or in other words, the chokhmah, the supernal chokhmah, in the world of Atzilus, which really transcends the natural order of creation, which the kind of natural order of creation, which is where all the other animal sacrifices tapped into, was really on the levels of Zer Anpin and Malchus of Atzilus. So today we're going to be focusing specifically on the tzaddik now, and we're going to be focusing on how this relates to the tzaddik and how this level of the dew of the crystal, or in the Aramaic terms, the tala divdilucha, how this level has a correspondence in terms of the effect of the tzaddik as well. So there's a corresponding level by which the actions of the tzaddik tap into and get triggered when they pass away, so that there's this type of water that emerges and that pours forth after the tzaddik passes away, similar to the dew of the crystal, the tala dibdilucha, that gets triggered to flow downwards during as a result of the red heifer, as a result of the ritual of the red heifer, of the Parah Aduma. So this might sound very, very abstract to you, and it does get kind of technical, but hopefully that gave you a nice little introduction to all of this. And let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains it. And maybe we'll explain a little bit more as we go and get deeper into this as we go. So here we go. So the Alter Rebbe begins this section, which again, for context, is the second part, the second half of this letter, this Epistle 28 in Iggeres HaKodesh, which is a letter of condolence written to Rabbi Levi Yitchak of Berditchov after the passing of his son Rav Meir. So the Alter Rebbe begins here, and he says that it's known that Abba, that the level of Abba, which literally means father, which is a Kabbalistic term for the sphere of Chokhmah, draws its sustenance from the eighth mazal, which is the tikkun of the Notzer Chesed. Okay, so not to get too confused here. So there's this idea of the Yod Gimel Midos HaRachamim. You may have heard about this, the 13 attributes of mercy. We often say this in many prayers that we say, especially on Rosh Hashanah. It comes up a lot, and Yom Kippur as well. We arouse God's 13 attributes of mercy. There's a lot of Kabbalah surrounding this idea of the 13 attributes of mercy. As a nice little interesting tidbit to know, one of the reasons why Jewish men are encouraged to have beards is because it's taught that these 13 attributes of mercy actually have like a placement on the face. Like there's different points on the face that correspond to these 13 attributes of mercy. And so by growing out for a man, when he grows out his beard, he's letting this mercy flow out of his face, basically. And so, okay, so in brief, so we're not going to get into like all of the Kabbalah today about these 13 attributes of mercy, but the thing to know about it is that there's 13 attributes. And the eighth one of these attributes is what's called Notzer Chesed, which literally means, and he, meaning God, guards or creates chesed. So, but the main thing that you need to know is the Hebrew here. So the Hebrew word notzer. Notzer is the eighth attribute. And that word notzer, if you know Hebrew, it's nun vav tzadik resh. It's the same letters as the word ratzon. Resh tzadik vav nun. Ratzon in Hebrew means will, like desire, wanting something. And so there's a term that we use sometimes, like if we want to say that it's a very auspicious time, we say it's an et ratzon. It's a time of divine favor. And so the Alter Rebbe says that at the time of the passing of a tzaddik, then this et ratzon, this divine favor time, becomes revealed and shines in a revealed way from above to below. And the Alter Rebbe describes these tzaddikim as being people who serve God with love and with self-sacrifice of their entire lives for God during their lifetime, in the evening, in the morning, when they say Shema. So it's like when they say Shema, the Shema prayer, which we've looked at previously, if you really read the words of Shema and you really say them with intent, you're really saying that you're willing to sacrifice your entire life for God, which is how these tzaddikim actually live. And so since these tzaddikim actually live in this way, their actions would thus elevate what are called the Mayin Nukvin, the feminine waters, which we've spoken about before. So this is like the arousal from below. They would elevate these feminine waters to the Abba and Ima in Kriyat Shema, as is known. So the Abba and Ima is the Chochma and the Bina above. So when these tzaddikim would say Shema, and when they would say it with this intent to really give over their lives, what the effect that they had was to cause this arousal from below to get elevated, to elevate these feminine waters up above and stimulate the mother and father on high, the Chochma and Bina on high. And so too, when these tzaddikim would learn Torah, because when they would learn Torah, Torah also is related to Chochma, which Chochma again is that Abba and Ima, because Torah comes from Chochma. That's where it stems from. So through this stimulation, this elevation of the feminine waters through their intention during Kriyat Shema and through learning Torah, this would cause a drawing down and a descent of what's called the Mayin Duchin, the masculine waters. So the feminine waters would draw down the masculine waters. And where do the masculine waters come from? The masculine waters come from the tikkun of Notzer Chesed. So they come from this attribute of Notzer Chesed, this eighth attribute of the 13 attributes of mercy. Which again corresponds to this ratzon level, this divine will. And this becomes revealed when they pass away, as is known. So again, okay, so just to reiterate that, make sure that everybody's following what's going on over here. So tzaddikim, during their lifetime is a life of self-sacrifice. And this really becomes manifest when they recite the Shema with intention, as well as when they learn Torah, because Torah is really related to divine wisdom. And so when a tzaddik learns Torah, they're really, really like abnegating their mind for God's minds. And when they do these things, when they engage in these kind of actions, what happens is that this causes this like arousal from below, which is manifest as these waters, these feminine waters that go upwards and stimulate the Chochmah Ilah on high, the supernal Chochmah, Hashem's supernal Chochmah, from which the Torah comes from. And this supernal Chochmah on high is related to, it draws its sustenance from the 8th attribute of divine mercy, which is the attribute of Notzer. This attribute of Notzer, it's the same letters as the word Ratzon, which is divine will, which is or desire, which is why it sort of taps into this idea of an auspicious time, of a time of divine favor. So basically, it's like what's happening basically is that the effects of the tzaddik during their lifetime, the actions, the prayer and the Torah learning of the tzaddik during their lifetime causes this auspicious time of divine favor on high to get stimulated and to become revealed down here. And this becomes revealed specifically when they pass away. Why? So the Alter Rebbe continues and he says, because every effort that a person makes during their lifetime remains concealed, the effect of this remains concealed on high, and only becomes revealed afterwards in a way that's revealed from above to below when they pass away. So it's sort of like sometimes, you can think about this with a lot of different times. A lot of times you put in a lot of work into a project, let's say, and you don't see the effects of your labor until the very end. So it's similar here. Our lives, it's like we're putting in all this work, and the true effect of our work, it's having an effect on high, but we don't see the effect it's having until a person passes away. And so this is exactly the way it works for the tzaddik, so that after they pass away, this is when the revelation of this tikkun of Notzer Chesed becomes revealed. And it becomes revealed in a way of Chesed Hashem, the kindness of Hashem radiates Me'olam ve'ad olam al yira'av. So that's a citation from Tehillim chapter 103 verse 17, that the chesed of God, the kindness of God, radiates from world to world over those who fear him. So this basically, there's this radiance that comes about basically when a tzaddik passes away. That's the bottom line of what the Alter Rebbe is trying to teach her, is that there's a very special radiance that happens after a tzaddik passes away that was not present during their lifetime because it was concealed. And this radiance, what does it do? It affects salvation in the midst of the earth in order to atone for the sins of the generations. So there's a great atonement that happens when a tzaddik passes away. And that's going back to, we actually had mentioned that when we talked about when Miriam passed away in the Bible, it's the simple answer to why is it that the red heifer is described in conjunction with, adjacent to Miriam passing away, is because just as the red heifer, the parah aduma, atones for being in contact with the dead, so too does the passing of a tzaddik atone for the generation. And this effect is so powerful that it even can atone for sins that are deliberate, that come from the 3 impure klippos, which are even below klippos noga. So if you remember, there's different types of klippos, different types of husks that conceal God. There's what we call klippos noga, the translucent husk, which is like all the permissible things in the world, which have the potential to be elevated to God or descend back down. And like we can use things in a godly way or use things not in a godly way. But then there's the 3 impure klippos that absolutely cannot be used. These are acts that are forbidden. Things, objects that are forbidden to us, they cannot be elevated. But what the Alter Rebbe is saying here is a very, very powerful thing, that the passing of a tzaddik, the effect that a passing of a tzaddik has in terms of the atonement of the Jewish people, is that it can even atone for those kind of sins. So sins that are intentional sins, which these intentional sins come from the 3 klipos satmeos, these 3 impure klipos. Why? How can it do that? Because this mazel of notzer comes from the mochastima, comes from the hidden mind of Arich Anpin, of the Arich Anpin, which is the source of the Birurim. So we spoke about this mochastima of Arich Anpin yesterday, and this was that whole, that's dew of the crystal, the Tala Dibdilucha, as we called it in Aramaic, that which corresponded to the parah aduma, that came from the same place. So it's like we're tapping into that same place. And that place, that mochastima de Arich Anpin, the hidden mind of Arich Anpin, is the source of the Birurim. And so since it's the source of the Birurim, we're not in the realm of Birurim. We're not in the realm of clarification anymore. We're going to the source. We're tapping into the source. And on that level, then darkness can be transformed into light. The darkness of the Shrias HaKelim, darkness of the breaking of the vessels, can be transformed into the light of the world of Tikkun. which is not the case with other kinds of korbanos. So this brought us back to that discussion we had about what's so special about paraduma. Why is it so different than the other sacrifices that were brought? So the other sacrifices that were brought in the temple on the altar, they atoned for inadvertent sins, for what are called shkagot in Hebrew. And these shkagot, these inadvertent sins, these came about through, like, how does a person do an inadvertent sin? Like, you sin unintentionally. This is when a person's animal soul becomes in charge. Like when a person's animal soul takes hold of them and they kind of like just go out of control and they do something that they didn't mean to do, you know, like a person behaved animalistically or whatever. So those kind of sins, they come from klipas noga. They come from these translucent husks. So yes, it's bad. Obviously, we don't want to have our animal soul take hold of us and have us do things unintentionally that we don't want to do, but it happens. And these can be atoned for through the sacrifices in the temple of the animals, as is written about in Likutei Torah and Parshas Vayikra. So there's the Sefer Likutei Torah by the Alter Rebbe. He talks about this in depth in the Parsha Vayikra, the ability of the sacrifices in the Beis HaMikdash on the altar and how they were able to atone for these unintentional sins. But now we have the paraduma, we have the red heifer, and we see that this is why, now we understand why it is that the parsha of paraduma, why was it connected to the story of the passing of Miriam, the prophetess? It was because just like paraduma atones for creates this great atonement that it's able to atone for death, so too is the passing of tzaddik. The effect that atonement has is on a much greater level than just the mere level of atoning for unintentional sins. It can actually atone for intentional sins. And then the Alter Rebbe concludes with a teaching from the Yalkut in Parshat Shmini about specifically, to be specific about the red heifer, about the paraduma, that it's specifically the waters of purification that cause us. So it's not so much like the whole ritual of the paraduma, like with the hyssop and the branches and all that stuff that we spoke about. It's specifically the water that is mixed with the ashes. That's what causes this atonement to happen, which makes sense because it's what it's doing is it's stimulating the water above this, whether we're talking about the talit dibdirucha, the dew of the crystal, or whether we're talking about the masculine waters that get stimulated in terms of the tzaddik. It's like we're talking about water. We're talking about this flow, which is what water really corresponds to. So that's the end of the section, the end of the epistle. So I know it's like a lot. And again, I hope I was able to kind of explain this without having you guys get too caught up in the technicalities, because the main message of all of this, just to kind of conclude, is that the passing of a tzaddik is a very, very powerful thing. And the passing of a tzaddik, even a tzaddik that didn't necessarily have like a bunch of followers and was a big Rebbe or whatever, when a tzaddik passes away, then all of the actions that they did during their lifetime, all of their mesiras nefesh, all of their self-sacrifice, that they devoted their entire life to God, that created an effect on high. And when they pass away, that effect becomes revealed. And the way that it becomes revealed is in the way of tapping into this and kind of like opening up this flow of divine favor, this flow of ratzon from Hashem through the attribute of through tapping into the supernal chokhmah of the attribute of notzer, which is connected to the ratzon. And that flow of divine favor, the way that it manifests is in atoning for the generation, even for the intentional sins that they did. So basically, it's like the tzaddik is able to, the passing of the tzaddik is able to really bring atonement to a whole generation of people, even for intentional sins that they did. So that's a really intense thing, and a lot to think about. And, you know, hopefully this served as somewhat of a consolation to Rabbi Levi Yitchak of Berditchov at the time when his son passed away. And hopefully this can be meaningful to you as well in terms of thinking about the effects that your actions have and thinking about different tzaddikim who have passed away and thinking about how their life, their self-sacrifice that they made during their life was not only just for God, but it was actually for you and the amazing gift that these tzaddikim give to all of us. So that's it for today. And tomorrow we will begin a new epistle 29, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.